Okay, so firstly we're going to go through the different break periods, daily driving limits, and then the weekly driving limits. After which we'll move on to the fortnightly, daily rest periods, and the different rules for double manning. Beyond that, ferry journeys, how you can take weekly rest, how you can reduce it, and how you can have a split rest. After that, we'll take a look at how unforeseen events can occur and what you do should they happen. Okay, so firstly, we already know that drivers can drive up to 4.5 hours before they have to take a break. And that break is supposed to be 45 minutes in total. That 45 minutes can be taken in a couple of ways. Firstly, if a driver were to drive 4.5 hours off the trot all at once, then the 45 minutes has to be taken immediately after that, and it must be uninterrupted. In the example at the bottom of the screen, you can see where there's 3 hours of drive, followed by an hour of work and another hour and a half of driving. This means that they've reached the threshold of 4.5 hours of driving and immediately must take the 45 minutes of break required. The other way it can be done is by taking it in 2 periods, the first of which must be at least 15 minutes and the second of which must be no less than 30 minutes. Just to clarify on this, if you were to take a 44-minute break, then that's not 45, so it only counts as a 15. And secondly, if you then took a 29-minute break after that, you still haven't had at least a 15 and then at least a 30, which means if you continue to drive over 4.5 hours, you will infringe. In the following example, there are 2 differences that could have been made in order to make that a legal break. As you can see, the 2 hours of drive have been taken, followed by the break of 35 minutes, and then another 2.5 hours of drive. This means that the second break must be at least 30 minutes, or the first break should have been at least 45. Hence, in this example, that's exactly what's been done. The second break, 30 minutes, a completely acceptable circumstance. Once the break of 45 minutes has been taken, the slate is entirely wiped clean. This therefore means you can start a new 4.5 hour driving period as long as you've got enough driving hours within your daily limit. Usually, your daily limit will be 9 hours. However, you can increase this to 10 hours twice within a fixed week. And what actually constitutes as driving time? Well, that's the total amount of time that you've accumulated between one daily rest and another, or between a daily rest and a weekly rest. And just to clarify, driving is anything that you do when you're behind the wheel, bar when you take your rest and breaks. The exception to that is when you have off-road driving. And this is where some of your driving may be done on a private yard or somewhere where it isn't a public road. And in the past, the rules had an obligation whereby you could have all of that driving converted to other work. However, the rules now stand so that if you were to do any driving on a public road, all of the off-road driving from there on would count towards driving as well. So the one exception to where you can use off-road driving is where you do it before and then go onto a public road. As I say, anything after that would still count towards your driving time. Your weekly driving limit is 56 hours, and that's within a fixed week, which you cannot change. A fixed week runs from Monday midnight till the end of Sunday midnight. That's fixed, can't be altered. As you can see on the screen there, it's a perfect example of where 2 10 hours have occurred to create that 56-hour limit. And again, you can see how that's achieved with the 7th day being taken as rest. The maximum number of driving hours you can do in a fortnight is 90 hours. However, the word fortnight is crudely used simply because a fortnight does not mean you then start a fresh period after that. The 90 hours is calculated over every 2 consecutive weeks. In this example, you can see in week 1, 42 hours being driven, and then in week 2, 48 hours. This means that in week 3, the driver can still only drive for 42 hours. But bear in mind, you can't drive 90 hours within 1 week and then nothing within the second, because you've still got your 56-hour limit for each single week. Now that concludes everything we're going to discuss in terms of driving hours and breaks, but what we'll discuss next are the multi-manning rules and how that can change your breaks and increase your driving hours.